So I'm trying to have civil dialogue. So I
Fair
would be
enough.
considered a conservative, right?
That's totally
And
fine.
and I do agree at the federal level. Yes, it's not the Republican position to move towards gun laws because we're very much so Second Amendment enthusiasts, right? So I do agree with it. But I'm also living in Philadelphia, and my background, just for the LEO that's sitting there, is yes, I'm also a former cop as well as a veteran of both the United States Army and the United
Thank you
States
for your service.
Marine Corps. And so my issue is these are very complicated issues, and I usually side with the rights of the people, right? And so when I've heard you guys talk about fourth or the red flag laws, I'm very skeptical just because of Fourth Amendment violations, right? I think that I don't like the due process part of the fourth or the red flag laws
Okay, so
currently the
listen,
way it
David, I'm
exists.
sorry to interrupt. Let's
Yeah,
just agree to disagree on red flag laws. I want to hear from
yeah,
you, a former cop and someone who served.
yeah.
What are some of your solutions that you think Democrats and Republicans should get together and do?
I think that what I'm seeing here locally, and I want to get the LEO the lieutenant's position on this is a lot of the local laws is what's hindering us, right? So let's say in Philadelphia, they got rid of Terry searches, which was one of the strong tools that we used to use to be able to not really pat down, but be able to frisk for weapons. So it's a hindrance for us to be able to I think it was like about a year ago, we had a mass shooter in Philadelphia, but the Philadelphia cops weren't allowed to do the basics that would be able to even consensually stop this guy
Well,
with
let
an
me let, let, let me
AR-15.
say a couple of things. Philadelphia is a one in 100,000 example. They're very left, very liberal, so they stopped the stop and frisk and the Terry engagement. But being a police officer, and I'm not saying this with hubris at all, I'm saying in a very humble way, only because I was a street cop most of my career and a supervisor for more than half of my career, and so if you're trained properly, you should be able to interact with someone and get the information that you want to get without saying, hey, stop, reasonable suspicion, I'm patting you down. I mean, if you know how to talk to people and you know the laws, and if they're not breaking a law and you don't have a reason to stop them, that's why they got in trouble because they were stopping everybody and saying everybody looks
Yeah.
suspicious. And you can't do
Mhm.
that. But I think a reasonable cop, I know the police officers that were under me as a sergeant and lieutenant, I never had any issues with any of that
Yeah.
ever because they were very well trained and they knew what they could and could not
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
They were taught if you can't get it, if you
Yeah,
think they're guilty, if you
and
think
so
they're doing
I
something
don't want to
wrong,
like
if
talk
you
over
think,
you,
but
but I
you're,
want to interject real quick
well, let
because
me just say, they were
you're
taught to
yeah, go
walk
ahead.
away. If you can't get what you
Yeah.
want from the person, don't violate their rights, walk away. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so going back to that, Philadelphia is one of those areas where I said the Democrats, we have very strong gun laws in Philadelphia. It's even stronger than a lot of the other cities within, because I think you guys understand how Pennsylvania works.
Yes.
Philadelphia is very, very strong when it comes to gun laws. But the problem is, as I said, Democrats hurt themselves at the local level. So there's a lot of conversation to be had about, are you hindering yourself from being able to get after
David,
something?
here's where we
Because
disagree. Here's where we disagree, David. And I guess I'll put it like this. Let me ask you this: are you comfortable with a kid when they turn 18 years old, no matter what state you live in, the day you turn 18, walking into a gun store, never carried a weapon before, buying thousands of rounds of ammunition and several assault weapons? Are you okay with that? It's a very basic question. Forget about Democrats and
yeah,
Republicans or where it is. Are you
yeah,
okay with that?
yes, but yes, actually, I am,
Okay, well,
and
that's a fundamental disagreement that we have because I don't
yes,
think we should have assault weapons out there in society, and I don't think that 18 years old, never trained how to use a weapon. I'm not comfortable with that, and I think I think
yeah,
we are a country that is obsessed with our guns.
You have to have reasonable laws. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
you
don't.
can't just say open card
So,
and good
so I
luck.
wanted to ask you a question then, based upon that question, right?
Sure.
So, can you define an assault weapon to me? That's
Yep.
one
I
of
get this.
that's like been the
Sure.
biggest thing that I've tried to
So I
understand from
so
from the left.
Okay, well, I'm not from the left. I'm a registered independent who doesn't want
Okay,
innocent people to die. I didn't vote for Barack Obama. I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. I'm for capital punishment. I'm for border security. And I don't know why
okay,
people automatically assume because I don't want innocent people to die. And I think our gun laws need to be stricter, for lack of a better term, that I'm on the left. I don't know why people do that. So you're wrong about that. That's number one. Number two, okay? I get into the weeds with people all the time when it comes to assault weapons. And I will be the first one to admit to you, I'm not an expert when it comes to guns. You probably know a lot more about guns, and certainly Leonard does, than I do. But here's what I will tell you. The types of guns that were used in Las Vegas that killed 61 people, the types of guns that were used in the Columbine shooting, the biggest mass shootings in American history were used with assault weapons. The types of guns that were built not to defend yourself, but to kill as many people as possible in a short period of time. Now, I'm more interested, sir, in having a conversation with you about solutions, and I haven't really heard any from you. I've only heard you criticize red flag laws. I've heard you wanting to get into the weeds with me, with all due respect.
Can I make a quick comment?
Yeah, just one second. I've heard you get into the weeds with me about what is an assault weapon, but I haven't really heard you. All I've heard you do is criticize Democrats. I want to know real solutions.
So I guess the reason why I'm probing the answers is to try to find a common ground, because a lot of my mindset is based upon the people's rights. When people throw out an assault weapon, right, I want it defined because, and I think that's been the biggest problem in our communication gap, is can you define it?
Well,
let me interrupt.
Do we have the right to own a grenade? Do citizens have the right to own?
Go back to an AR-15, but I really wanted
assault
to quickly
weapons
cite
are weapons that were primarily designed for military. Okay, and they generally are high capacity. They generally have they're usually louder, and they do more damage by the nature of their
the definition
caliber.
is usually belt fed, gas operated, got that whole thing. The problem is when people use that to take AR-15s, which is covered, by the way, underneath the Heller decision, underneath common use. And that's why I'm saying it's a right that's protected of the people for the AR-15.
Okay, so let me ask you another question then. If you want to speak about rights, does that mean that people should have the right to own a tanker, a bomb, a grenade? Where do we draw the line? Where do you draw the line? What should people not be allowed to have?
The lines are already drawn. There's already rules on that.
Okay, so nothing could be changed with the Constitution, even though when they wrote the Constitution, we had something called muskets, but you're not willing to change anything? Does that mean we should be allowed to own human beings?
The veteran side of me is very cautious about the government itself disarming the populace, especially when I went through Iraq.
How are they disarming? But sir, I respect your service, but how are they disarming the populace? I'm not saying we all shouldn't be allowed to have guns.
AR-15s, right? If you move to take AR-15s, the whole premises of the Second Amendment is for the individual American.
A well-regulated militia.
We're not even close. We're not even close to AR-15s.
No. Real quick, you need to cite Heller v. D.C. 2008.
So what are your... See, this is my problem, David.
I know, but just because
the
a case
Supreme
law...
Court ruled it is the individual right to keep and bear arms outside of a well-regulated militia.
Okay, but that's
outside of it.
But that's a blanket statement. It's non-specific. We're talking about AR-15s, and I'm telling you that is one of the most favorite guns of all Americans, and no legislation, I don't think, at this point in our history is going to pass to ban AR-15s.
I agree.
That's why I advocate for let's take a smaller bite. Let's do easier things. Let's do things that have more regulations that make common sense.
Leonard, David, I'm speaking to you now, okay? And by the way, thank you for your service to this country. I respect you, and you're a hero for that, even though we really disagree on this issue. But David, respectfully, this is my biggest issue with this conversation. I haven't heard any solutions from you. All I've heard from is you talk about the Second Amendment, you talk about the Constitution, you like to blame Democrats for what's going on in Philadelphia.
Banning ARs is not a solution.
I understand. But David, I'm coming up with solutions that you might not agree with. Okay, fine. I haven't heard one solution out of your mouth.
It's trying to find common ground. I think that we both have these.
So give me something. Give me a solution.
Mental health.
Okay, but what does that mean?
But
what does that mean? Republicans don't want to put money into helping people that are mentally deranged. And if you don't believe me, you could go to Washington, D.C. and look at all the bills they vote against when Democrats are trying to help people that are mentally ill. So Republicans, you could blame for that one. Now, I agree with you. We don't want bad people, mentally ill people getting their hands on a gun. All three of us agree on that. But that's not a bill, and that's not a solution. Give me an actual solution. What would you do, David, if you were a lawmaker? Because all I hear from you is, this is not an assault weapon. Let's get into the weeds on what an assault weapon is.
I think that
mental illness, who gets to say? Who gets to say?
The only solution I truly have, and I'm going to be honest, is as the Constitution states, is my position to uphold the Second Amendment. Now, when it comes to, and the reason being, as I said, is I care about the individual American and their right to be able to protect themselves against the possible tyranny of a government.
So you don't have any solutions then?
When
obviously.
you're talking in terms of solutions, we are a long way from changing the Second Amendment. So that's
David, you sound like you're a nice guy, okay? You really do. And we can disagree. That's good. I like disagreement.
The whole point.
Okay, but David,
disagree.
okay, I agree. Okay, fine. But you haven't given me any solutions. And I get frustrated.
I think the solutions, as I said, is enable the police officers, right? Enable at the state function. We're talking about federally. You're really not going to change the Republicans' position at the federal. But at the state, enable the law enforcement agencies to do the background check stuff correctly, which, people like Hunter Biden.
They do background checks. Police do background checks. What do you, Leonard, you can help me on that one.
The whole background check stuff, that's just normal. We already do it. But actually enabling us to get after things like gun charges.
I don't know any state that doesn't have a background check.
So we cannot get after things in Philadelphia. Like, I wanted to say real quick, and then I'll go, which is for the lieutenant, we are so handicapped at that city level underneath to where we can't even stop people for minor traffic infractions. How do you get to that probable cause aspects if you got somebody that's got these illegal guns in there? If you can't even pull them over for things like that, for reasonable suspicion, you can't even pull people
David,
over.
Let me interrupt. I understand.
Hang on, David. Hang on, David.
I understand. You're saying all politics is local, and I understand that. But we're talking on a bigger scale, because when you start to go state to state, like I said, Arizona, you could be 21 years old, just walk in, buy a gun, and if your son or daughter is over 18, you can just give it to them, and it's their gun.
Yeah. So, Leonard, I'm glad that David called. David, I'm glad you called in. But this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about when I get into gun control debates. David wanted to debate me on what's an assault weapon. He wanted to blame Democrats for what's going on in Philadelphia. He talks about the Second Amendment and the Constitution. Okay, we could agree to disagree.
Talking about city
legislation. Right. However, this is what I want people to take away from this conversation. David had zero solutions. You can disagree with Leonard's solutions. You can disagree with Brian's solutions. Why am I talking to the third? I don't know, first person. But at least we're coming up with some solutions. David, next time you call into this show, give me some solutions. Police officers are already doing background checks in every state in this country.
That's the second caller in a row that really didn't.
Yeah. You have no solutions. Everybody that wants to debate me or you on this issue literally has no real solutions. And that is why the Republican Party is at fault, in my opinion, a big reason why we can't pass comprehensive background checks in this country.
Can I just say real quick?
Yeah.
His two main points were assault weapons shouldn't be banned and Second Amendment.
Yeah.
So we're not even in the ballpark talking about those types of changes.
No. And by the way, people on Brian, you haven't given any solutions. I've named you 5 or 6.
We could say them again.
Okay, I'll say it one more time. So again, the people could get the MAGA wax out of their ears and listen. Okay. I personally believe there should be some sort of mandatory training, maybe a 2-hour class, teach you how to hold the weapon, teach you how to shoot a weapon, how to store the weapon. That's it, just 2 hours. I understand driving a car is a privilege, but in my opinion, you have to take a test when you get your driver's license. You have an instructor. Same thing with a gun. Give me a 2-hour mandatory
Nevada
training
used
class.
to have that.
Right.
You used to have to take a class for a gun safety permit.
Right.
And we did it away with it in 2015. And you know who controlled the legislature in Nevada in 2015? It wasn't the Democrats.
Yeah, what a shocker.
And they got rid of the gun registration completely.
Yeah. So that's number 1. Number 2, raise the age to 18 to 21. Number 3, we need to have an assault weapons ban like we had in the early 90s when gun violence was way down and then Republicans allowed it to fizzle out. Yes, I do believe red flag laws need to be more consistent and put on the books as well. Yes, I do believe that our laws should be stronger. If you sell an illegal gun or you're caught with an illegal gun, I do believe there should be a mandatory prison sentence. And ghost guns. That's all in there.
3D printing.
Absolutely. I agree with you 150% on that. Now, we just named 6 things, right? Give me 2 of those. And don't tell me we're not coming up with solutions, because I haven't heard one from some of you maggots out there. We just gave you 6. Give me 2 of those things.
Do we need a barrel magazines that hold 250 rounds? Do we need? I can go right now to a gun store locally and buy one that has 100 with 2 drums, one on each side, and they're legal. There's no law against them.